We're going to start today with looking at social control through the ages. So you can see you've got an image there of 16th century and the 21st century. I want you to think about what it is telling us about how things have changed over time. Have a look at who is doing the watching and keeping an eye over society. Yes, we've got good old CCTV, a very common part of your life, but not so much in times gone by. So thinking about CCTV, I'd like you to just have a little think at home, have a discussion at home if you want to, or jot a couple of thoughts down. Is the use of CCTV, do you think, a good method of controlling people within society? So press pause and just have a little think about that and whether you think that is a good method. We're going to look at an article now. So the article will be attached to wherever you get this from, so the Google Classroom. And I want you to have a read of the article, which gives you two different opinions about CCTV. Read it and then just jot down a paragraph or so sharing your answer to the question above about whether CCTV is good or bad. So you've had some initial thoughts, you've read the article, and now you're going to add your thoughts having read the article to your initial thoughts. So press pause, read the article, and then write a paragraph or so about your views. So a title for today, how is formal control carried out? We're going to look at the role played by the police and the courts, and we're going to have a look at analysing some statistics. We know that in sociology we do have to do quite a bit of mathematical analysis of bar charts and graphs and so on and so forth. A couple of words for your glossary here. So we've got formal control. So formal control is different from informal control, and this is why. Formal control, this is the bit for your glossary, the bigger of the two green boxes, is carried out by organisations such as the police and the courts. It's different to informal control because those with formal control have powers. They have powers to arrest and to imprison people who break the law. So it's something that comes with power. Two aspects to think about then with this formal control. We've got the police and we've got the courts. Obviously the courts and the police are related, but they do have very separate jobs. So what you're going to do in a moment is you're going to have a look at the information on the next bits of slides, and you're going to just see if you can jot down, what do sociologists believe that the police should do? What are public relations? What is community policing? What is zero tolerance policy or policing? And what are courts also known as? What do they do? Who decides the cases that go to court? What is a magistrate's court? And then what is a crown court? So the information is on the next slides. I'll read them for you, but you do need to spend a minute pressing pause and just drawing out that table into your books, or at least writing down the headings of the questions. So press pause, get that done. So there are different types of policing depending on what country you're in. So for example, sociologists all agree that police should prevent and investigate crime. They should keep order and coordinate road issues to enforce formal control. So that's the job of police, essentially to keep the areas safe. And it all depends where you are and what's needed depending on how they deal with things. So first of all, we have mostly in our country community policing. So policing varies depending on the public relations they're dealing with. In other words, in our country, the public relations is very much around community policing. So beat policing, dealing with the public, developing links with the community, going into the schools and talking to them, walking the streets, trying to disperse groups of teenagers who are causing trouble in the parks and all of that sort of thing that you might be familiar with. But there's some policing styles are much stricter. So the NYPD in New York, they charge people even for smaller crimes to prevent bigger crimes. And this is having a zero tolerance policy or doing zero tolerance policing. The idea being, if they stop the smaller crimes, the bigger crimes won't happen because people have already been punished for the smaller crimes. They will not want to continue with the bigger crimes. So different types of courts. Magistrates' courts are less serious compared to the Crown Courts. That's important. So courts in the UK are known as the judiciary. Their job is to interpret the government's laws and put them into practice. The police catch criminals, but the Crown Prosecution Service decides if the case goes to court. So the police do the investigating, the police do the catching, they then get a case against their alleged criminal. They take it to the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Crown Prosecution Service to decide if they've got enough evidence and if it's in the public interest to go ahead with a court case. And then it would either go to the Magistrates Court, which could be a maximum sentence of 6 months and fines up to £5,000. So we're talking the smaller end of the criminal spectrum, if you like. And then we've got the Crown Court, the more serious, controlled by judges, run by a jury. So that's your bigger crimes, your murders and this sort of thing. Hopefully then you've filled in your table now, and you've got all the information on policing and of courts from your previous slides. So what you need to be thinking about is very clearly two different types of policing. The community, the beat policing that we have most familiarly in our country, and in some other countries where they have this zero tolerance policy, this zero tolerance policing, the very strict enforcing policing. So which type of policy do you think, which type of policing do you think would be more effective and why? First of all, I'd like you to think about, so a paragraph on that, please press pause and have a think. What policing do you think would be better? And then explain what might you think would stop this formal control from working as it should. If formal control was absolutely perfect, there would be no criminals, there'd be no people in prison, there'd be no crime, or at least if people did things once, they'd learn from it and they wouldn't do it again, so we wouldn't have any repeat offenders and so on. So what do you think stops that happening? What might stop formal control from working as it should do? Why do we still get criminals? Why do we get some of the attitudes towards the police that we get? Why do we get repeat offenders? Thinking of all of those things. So press pause, and again, a paragraph or so, your views on those things. What do you think are the reasons for that? So for the final task of this lesson, I want you to be thinking about where the police and the courts face criticism, and it's around diversity. So you can see there's 3 different graphs here, and they're also on Google Classroom as individual attachments if that's easier for you. Have a look at them and have a look so you can see whether you think we've got diversity in terms of gender, in terms of black, Asian and ethnic minority groupings, and so on, in terms of the judges and in terms of policing. So press pause and try to see if you can find 3 things that you would be critical about in terms of policing and the courts being diverse, so being different or being equal in terms of who they are using to represent them and therefore to represent the communities that they are working with. If you can give numbers, if you can actually take figures from the different graphs or even look at trends and so on, that would be particularly good. So if you're actually using figures like 2.9% of Asian and so on and so forth, that would be particularly good. So press pause, have a go at that. And when you've finished, you are done for today. Well done.